Hi, and welcome back to the Switch Show. I am your host, very proud to be your host, Malisa Chinoye. Today we're going to be talking about love. We're going to be talking about love. Ooh. Anyway, I intended for this series to be done. Well, it's not a series, but there are a series. It's a mini series if you want to call it that. I don't know why I'm denying that it's a series. Anyway, I intended for this to be done in February, but it wasn't. Alright, because of circumstances. Let's put it that way. But yeah, we're here, and there really isn't a fixed time to talk about love. Love is something that should be talked about every single year. And I had an episode called The Death of Love, and I said that we shouldn't restrict love to 1 month. Love is too big, too whole, too mighty, too beautiful to be squeezed or boxed into a month's celebration. Love is so inexhaustive. True love, that is. It is inexhaustive. Alright. Yeah. But today we're talking about the language of love. I have talked about it here and there. I mentioned it in The Death of Love. I mentioned it in the episode I titled Dear Future Wife. I mentioned about the language of love. Today we're going to talk about it. Alright. And we're also going to talk about the dialects of the language of love. Okay? Are we ready? Are we strapped in? Alright. Let's get it. These are the two key things that you should know. Love has one language and love has many dialects. So love equals one language, many dialects. In this case, the dialects are the ones that have been touted by Dr. Gary Chapman as the love languages. I know you're probably thinking, well, love has been represented as five. There are five love languages. I want to tell you that, hey, my opinion, take with what? A grain of salt or a pinch of rice. No, not a pinch. Take with a pinch of salt or a plate of rice, whatever fits your diet. So I'm saying that love has one language, and the language of love is sacrifice. Think of it like an organogram. If you know what an organogram is, it basically is a sometimes a graphic or an image basically that explains different functions or different parts of an organization. But that's what an organogram is. Usually it could even be a map of the organization telling you where to go and what office to enter into. That's what an organogram is. So think of it as one of those organograms you drew in secondary school. I knew I drew one in biology when we were talking about the animal kingdom. So you had kingdom, animalia, and after kingdom is phylum. Then you drew one line, a short dash vertically, and then you drew a long horizontal line. And from that horizontal line, you had multiple branches, vertically drawn branches, and that represented all the phylums. So Chordata, Porifera, Echinodermata, Nidaria, Platyhelminthes, and the rest of them. You get the point. So think of it like that. When we're talking about love, the big one is sacrifice. And then you draw a little vertical line, a long horizontal line across, and then the branches under it is your physical touch, your words of affirmation, acts of service, gifts giving, and quality time. Right? Beautiful. Now, let's talk about the first one, the general language of love, sacrifice. It is truer now than it has ever been when the Bible says, greater love has no man than this, than to lay his life down for his brother. Greater love has no man than this, than to lay his life down for his brother. It is truer in our generation than it ever has been. While I was thinking about the things to say, this is one of the expository episodes, right? One of the expository ones. And I was thinking about what to say. This was the line that kept repeating in my head, that it is truer now, and that greater love has no man than this, than to lay his life down for his brother. And the reason it is truer now is because, permit me to say, we are more selfish than we've ever been. We are more selfish as a species. We're more selfish than we've ever been. I'm trying not to build so much on my generation, the Gen Zers, but I have to. Right? I have to. For the sake of this, and so that I can buttress my point, I'm going to say this. Now, you may not be part of the statistic, and that's okay. You don't have to be part of the statistic to feel like a Gen Zer. However, what I'm trying to say is statistics show that Gen Zers are the loneliest, or one of the lonelier of the generations that have existed, because we spend so much time behind our screens. A laptop screen, a phone screen, a tablet screen. You get the point. And not only that, we are so consumed by the hustle, by the bustle, by the grind. We're chasing the bag. We are going after what we think is going to bring us the utmost satisfaction and joy, that we do not care the bridges we burn. We do not care the relationship we make or don't make along the way. And then when we've hit zenith somewhere later down the line, we're lonely. And we haven't even reached, a lot of us haven't reached the peak. We haven't hit our prime. We haven't gotten to the zenith. We haven't scaled the mountain and said, oh, this is what it looks like to have the most power and influence. We are still at the very early stages of our lives. But we're so lonely. Another report shows that we are more of consumers than we are producers. That our generation is likely to not leave anything for the generations coming after us, because we are consuming everything. That every generation that came left something, pieces of culture, relics of art, history, literature, science. There was some, I don't know how they came to that conclusion. I think it might be far-fetched, but it came to that conclusion. And it's not conclusive, it's not set in stone, but a forecast based on the observable trend that we are very consumer minded. Consumerism has never been as high as it is right now. Think about it. Think about it. And it's not even just about buying stuff, because when you hear consumerism, you are likely to fall into the trap of thinking that it's just purchases of goods and services. So the newest shoes, the newest bags, pieces of clothing, fashion items, or the latest gadgets. It doesn't have to be fashion, it could be technology, it could be e-products like books, training materials, courses, and all of that. You say, oh, well, those things are good. Yeah. Services, your streaming services, Spotify, Apple Music, what else? Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Hulu, HBO Max, and the rest of them. A lot of things. And you're saying, well, that is kind of important. Our parents had cable. We have our own kind of cable, but now you don't need physical cables. And I'll agree with you. Then there's social media. Our parents certainly did not have social media. And social media is the height of consumerism. Think about all the videos you watch. You may not think about it much, or maybe you already have. But that is the height of consumerism. How it is that a word that hasn't existed in the English dictionary now exists. Doom scrolling. Like, oh my goodness, I've been doom scrolling on TikTok all day. You spend 2-3 hours on TikTok. This isn't even an episode to bash anybody or to call out anybody. I'm just trying to hint at how consumer minded we are as a generation and how it is critical to our conversation around love. So skip. Because of how consumer centric we are seeing that our generation is almost incapable of love. And I think, or rather, I will say that it is important that we recognize that the language of love is sacrifice before anything else. Before the physical touch, before the words of affirmation, before the acts of service, giving of gifts, before spending quality time together, the primary thing is sacrifice. Sacrifice. Can you make time in your schedule to hang out with friends? Can you make time in your schedule to hang out with someone you're trying to pursue a romantic relationship with? You might say, oh, that's not the crazy thing, because our idea of sacrifice has to be something so big. I mean, when we talk about sacrifice, we mean it in a way that it is something that takes from you, like you feel it. But sometimes sacrifices are not one-off or grand gestures. They're little sacrifices, little things. Carving out time to talk to the person you claim to love or you want to pursue a romantic relationship with. Oh, my schedule is so busy, but I can make out 30 minutes to talk to you. If it's a FaceTime, a video call, maybe voice call, or oh, I'm not in the right place. I'm not in a good place to pick up a call. You might not hear me completely. I mean, if you have access to things like advanced earbuds and newer iPhones and Samsungs and everything, you can speak to someone and it will filter out the background noise and they'll be able to hear your voice clearly. But if you don't have access to that, then you might not be in a situation like that. But you say, oh yeah, we can text. And for about 30 minutes or thereabout, your attention is completely on that person. Completely. You might not think of it as sacrifice, but I do. And I say it is. Again, you take my opinion with a grain of salt or a pinch of rice. Whatever fits your diet, it's plate of rice. I don't know why I keep on saying pinch of rice. It's plate of rice. I've said this thing multiple times and now I'm getting it wrong. Anyway, the point is, sacrifice requires intentional and conscious efforts. And that is why it flows so seamlessly into what Dr. Gary Chapman calls the love languages, and I call them the dialects of love. Number one, words of affirmation. You're not someone who is necessarily good with their words, but you spend time learning, growing, shaping your vocabulary so that you can serenade, so that you can woo, so that you can properly encapsulate the beauty of your spouse or your partner, so that you can properly celebrate them with words because they respond better to words, or they respond the best to words. Spending that time intentionally curating a poem, a letter, a text, a birthday message, an anniversary message, whatever it is, or just a good morning text, spending time to curate that would stem from an understanding or a speaking of the language of sacrifice. It might be like, "Ah, man, you're bro, this thing is not that deep. You could just chat GPT it." That's the problem. Now, I'm not anti AI and I'm not pro AI. I'm kind of in the middle of things. Like, it's a good tool, but it shouldn't replace your humanity. You can't just say, "Oh, ChatGPT, how do I send a good morning text to my girlfriend? Make it sound human." I know some people do that. I don't know them personally, but I know it happens because if people can form relationships with AI chatbots, what's stopping them from telling it to create good morning text and love messages? Absolutely nothing. And let's talk about acts of service. I think this is one of the most sacrificial of all of the love languages or dialects of love. You get it, I'll use it interchangeably, but you get my point. Doing something, I mean, acts of service, when people talk about acts of service, it usually involves things like, oh, do the laundry, wash the dishes, help out in the kitchen, help out around the home, and all of that. They forget that there's an important word in that, and that is service. I'm not trying to make everything deep and grandiose or inflate it to an astronomical proportion. Like, "Ah, bro, everything is that deep." There's a reason why it's called act of service. It is service. It is service. And the thing about it is that you could be doing the dishes, taking out the trash, and all those things. You could be doing it without paying attention. Could just be running on autopilot. I will say that everything is intentional. That's not to say that if somebody is doing something that you consider an act of service, that you should be asking them, "Oh, are you doing it on autopilot or not?" No, I'm not saying you should be. No, don't do that. What I'm saying is that it is possible that you fall into a routine because you know what your partner's love language is, what your spouse's love language is. You fall into a routine and you forget that there has to be some kind of intentionality behind it. You have to be conscious. You have to be doing it intentionally and lovingly. I say this every time, and I say that I'm saying it as much as I'm putting this out there, I'm also saying to myself. So this is soliloquy in a sense, a recorded soliloquy session. And it applies to all of them. For gifts giving, you it really has to be intentional. You can't be running autopilot for gift giving. You have to be intentional. You have to be. Quality time. Every single one of them. Even physical touch. I know physical touch is such a touchy, no pun intended, subject. It's anytime people hear physical touch, the one thing that comes to mind is sex or foreplay. That's not all physical touch is. It's in the little beautiful things like brushing against each other's hands while walking, holding each other's hands, arm in arm, maybe you're slow dancing, just what people say cuddling. But anytime people talk about cuddling, it's foreplay leading up to sex. That's the idea. But being in each other's company physically, it doesn't always lead to intercourse. It shouldn't always lead to sex, to having sex, for Christ's sake. Physical touch is not just about copulating, it's not just physical intimacy. Yes, sex is involved in physical intimacy, but there's a lot more to it before sex. It's about intentionally enjoying each other's presence, each other's warmth, each other's feel, and bonding. So that's it. That's it. This is not supposed to be a long thought or an overextended episode. I've talked a lot about it in previous episodes, and if you've listened, you'd catch it. This is just a dedicated expansion of all the crumbs that are sprinkled in other episodes. And I hope that maybe you glean a thing or two and know that you have to do things that may not necessarily be comfortable. You have to be intentional. It's not just running on autopilot or, as they would say, on vibes and inshallah. You not that you have to be intentional, and there's a measure of intention that comes with that only comes by learning the language of sacrifice. Anyway, my 2 cents. Oh no, me Nigerian, my two kobo. I will see you on the next episode. Flip the switch and illuminate. Thank you for listening, by the way. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. I hope to see you for as long as this show runs. And I hope you're enjoying our episodes, all the episodes we keep giving. You can send in your request. I think I should leave the email address in the description so you can send in your request, episode request. Further along the line, we're going to have Q&A episodes, and you can also send in questions by then. But yeah, I love you all so much. Thank you for always tuning in, and thank you for your support. It means the world to me. And from wherever you're tuning in, thank you. I see you. I wish I could speak all of your languages, but I can't. So thank you, and I'll see you on the next episode. Flip the switch and illuminate. I'll see you around. Over and out.